Hi, my name's Xenu, and you're listening to Anti-Moonboy News. We got a lot to talk about today. We're going to be going over the Tradeogre seizure. Canadian authorities have taken over the servers for Tradeogre and have seized $56 million worth of cryptocurrency. It's a major story, so we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about that. And there was also some other stuff this week, such as the feds in America this time bothering some guy running a Tor exit relay. But it might not be as cut and dry as I initially thought it was. It turns out both of the parties are not really that great. So we're going to be talking about that as well. Before I get to everything, by the way, I do want to point this out. My RSS feed on my site is broken. Hopefully I'll have a fix out by the time this episode comes out, but if not, that is why Spotify isn't working and my podcast RSS feed isn't working. So I apologize about that. Currently in the process of fixing that, but hopefully I do get it fixed soon. But if not, you can of course go to YouTube, Rumble, or Odyssey to listen to shows there, or you can listen to the MP3 links directly. You can find links to the episodes on antimoonboy.com. All right, so sorry about that. Super chats, I got one this week. If you want to donate, you can go to xmrchat.com/Xenu to participate. And yeah, I received one from an individual who's going by the name Tradeogre. How appropriate. And they donate 0.01 XMR. Thank you very much. And they say, would you be able to share a beginner-friendly review and guide on Haveno/Retoswap, along with your thoughts on the fork? Well, again, thank you. And yeah, I actually am planning on making a Retoswap video. I just haven't gotten around to it. Yeah, past couple weeks have been crazy because I'm moving, or at least I'm in the process of moving. The lady that is the broker that I'm dealing with, I mean, she claims that she's been doing this job for like 40 years, but like she doesn't know how to use email. Like she had trouble sending me an email, like was having difficulty with that. And eventually I'm like, okay, give me your email and I'll email you. So that worked. But now she's having difficulty attaching a lease for me. So that's the saga with that. But yeah, I mean, I'm figuring out because I have to move a bunch of shit. And yeah, it's a whole thing. So my free time has been spent mostly doing that, to be honest with you. I'm also planning my vacation, which I haven't completely purchased yet, but next week I think I'll be talking about that. So I've been doing a lot of extra stuff, and frankly, I am a little burnt out with the channel. You know, sometimes yeah, it just is what it is. You know, so I haven't made a Retoswap video, and I want to get to it, but it's just on the back burner at the moment. That will be my next tutorial video I will make, though. I do want to make one just because, yeah, I get asked all the time, actually, about Retoswap, and it's awesome. And, you know, with Tradeogre going down as well, and with how things are looking, you know, for the future of non-KYC sites on the clearnet, you know, Retoswap will be more important than ever. I mean, we need to have decentralized peer-to-peer marketplaces. So absolutely, I want to make something that's good, that people can use. I don't want to rush it, essentially. So I will have something soon. I apologize for the delays on that. Yeah, it is coming. And anyways, you ask, along with your thoughts on the fork, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Are you talking about Retoswap forking from Haveno? Yeah, I mean, I like Retoswap a lot. So, frankly, it's the only Haveno fork worth checking out, just because of, you know, how reputable it is compared to these other forks. That's just my personal opinion, though, because I've used Retoswap and I like it. So, I guess I think that's what you mean by that. So, yeah, that's what I would say. All right, well, thank you again, Tradeogre. I appreciate your donation. And if you want to participate on the program, send me a question, comment, whatever. I'll read it on the show. you can go to xmrchat.com/Xenu and send that to me. All right. So yeah, channel updates. I kind of already just talked about this, but yeah, I mean, again, kind of burnt out, just doing this show every week has been a lot. And I love it though. So, we're trying to hit an hour a week of content if possible. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun and I want to keep doing it. So it's been really exciting. I'm really pumped up too because I got a bunch of subs this week on YouTube. So if you are listening, please subscribe if you haven't yet. I'd really appreciate it. I'm only like 11, 12 away from 1,000 on YouTube. So I'm pretty excited about that. I wanted to try to get to 1,000 by the end of the year. And it looks like I have a good chance of getting 1,000 possibly by October. So really happy with that. And I should also mention too that, last week was kind of a big news week with the whole 18 block reorg that had happened. And I saw a big bump in listens last week on my show. And what does that tell me? Well, it tells me that, this news story happened and a lot of people tuned into my program. So that means a lot of people tuned into my show to get my opinion on it and, maybe get some more details on what had happened. So that's awesome. And it really, really gets me excited knowing that, that's what happened, right? So happy with that. Happy to see the growth of this channel. And yeah, there will be more tutorial videos coming out. I do want to make those. And Attack of the Poison Outputs will be coming back as well. So that actually leads me to my next thing. So I was thinking this week about Attack of the Poison Outputs. And I think it would be kind of cool to come back with a second season. Okay. And I was thinking because one, I need to talk about nodes a lot. So that's I can make 10 episodes about nodes and about ways nodes have been attacked. We can, do a deep dive on that. But I was also thinking well, now we also have this whole thing with Cubic that is happening. That could be another 5 to 10 episodes right there, right? So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a whole mini series in Attack of the Poison Outputs on the whole Cubic thing, on how proof of work can be attacked as well, or maybe how these suggested mitigations, how they can help Monero, etc. So I want to have a little detour in Attack of the Poison Outputs for that as well. I guess it's not really about ring signatures necessarily, but it is about how Monero can be attacked, and I think that's really what Attack of the Poison Outputs is, right? So yeah, I'm thinking actually now that I will have a season 2 of Attack of the Poison Outputs, which I will spend some time on. Unfortunately, though, it's just not coming in September. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be working on it and not telling people when it's coming out, but it will be coming out at a certain point. All right. So that's my plan right now. So hopefully I can get 10 to 15 episodes of good material out of that. And that'll just be another thing people can go to, on my channel. So excited about that. That will be coming at some point. But for now, I am just chugging away with this show and having a lot of fun with that. So the major news story this week, and really one of the biggest stories of the year, is that Tradeogre is Ogre, the largest non-KYC centralized exchange. Has been around for a while. I think almost a decade, if not longer. They were shut down by Canadian feds, the freaking Mounties of all people. And they were shut down, and $56 million worth of cryptocurrency was seized. So there's a lot to talk about here, a lot to break down, but really the major thing here is that this is a huge story. It's a big story because this is a non-KYC exchange, and the federal government, at least in Canada, but I'm sure they were also coordinating with other Western governments as well, they have shut this website down really under suspicious circumstances. We are going to read the press release, but they are implying that Tradeogre was being used to launder money. And in doing so, they seized a bunch of cryptocurrency funds from regular, normal people. In fact, it's probably the majority of the funds there are just from people who are using this centralized exchange. A lot of people are pissed off. A lot of people are shocked by this. But however, if you've been paying attention and you've been at least watching how, governments have been treating cryptocurrency through legislation, through the courts, this is really not a surprise. Every single non-KYC website on the clearnet will inevitably be attacked. This is what's going to happen. And Tradeogre was arguably the largest site. I'm not really sure how to even quantify that. But they had been around for a while, and what was cool about Tradeogre is that it was a traditional exchange. So you could actually set bids. You could be strategic with how you were purchasing cryptocurrency. Unlike a lot of these, or pretty much all of these swap websites, where you just put in an order and it just exchanges it instantly. With Tradeogre, you could treat it like a traditional, exchange. They didn't allow, like margin trading, so that wasn't an option. But it was, it had the charts and you could set bids, and it was kind of just like any other exchange that you could actively participate in. Tradeogre had different options for cryptocurrencies. It didn't have everything, but it was primarily used for Bitcoin and Monero. Monero was used pretty heavily on there. A lot of other random privacy coins, quote unquote, were on there. For example, I know Pirate Chain was on there. I know Darrow had been on there. Then you also had Litecoin, I believe, and Ethereum as well. WowNarrow was on there. I've used WowNarrow on there. So, the majority of the people on Tradeogre were using it for swapping into and out of Monero, but there were also other options as well. And the news broke this week that Tradeogre had been seized. Now, previously, we knew that there was something up because Tradeogre suddenly went down. This happened a couple weeks ago, if not longer, where the website just went down and it was under suspicious circumstances. I didn't really know why. Some people were saying it was an exit scam. Others were thinking it was seized. I thought it was seized. But there wasn't really a lot of information. It just kind of happened. And it was very suspicious too, because around the same time, Majestic Bank also folded. I don't know if you guys remember that, but that was a non-KYC swap service for Monero. They kind of came out of nowhere and they said, you know what, we're closing shop. Didn't provide any other information. They just immediately shut down. Highly suspicious. We still don't know why they did that. We can only assume it's related to this. At least that's what I'm assuming, because the timing of it is suspect, to say the least. And also, the other thing that happened around the same time was all of these decisions coming in. So we had, of course, the Tornado Cash decision. I think it was the same week where Roman Storm had a split decision with the courts. And also the Samurai Wallet duo, they pled guilty and they took a plea deal. So this all kind of happened all at once. And Monero was being attacked. But I think that's unrelated. I think that's just Monero being attacked as usual with this whole pubic situation. But anyways, yeah, we had these weird exchange stuff going on, and it was suspicious. But now we know for sure that Tradeogre, at least, has been taken down by the Canadian authorities. So I have the press release here, and it was published on September 18th, 2025 from Montreal, Quebec. It reads, RCMP executes record seizure of more than $56 million in cryptocurrency. Eastern region has carried out the largest cryptocurrency seizure in Canadian history. Thanks to the work of investigators specialized in financial crime, cybercrime, and cryptocurrencies, an estimated sum of over $56 million was recovered from the platform Tradeogre. This also marks the first time that a cryptocurrency exchange platform has been dismantled by Canadian law enforcement. The Money Laundering Investigative Team, MLIT, opened the file in June 2024 following a tip from Europol. The investigation found that the platform contravened Canadian laws and regulations. Specifically, it failed to register with the Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Centre of Canada as a money services business and did not identify its clients. Investigators have reason to believe that the majority of funds transacted on Tradeogre came from criminal sources. The main attraction of this type of platform, which doesn't require users to identify themselves to make an account, is that it hides the source of funds. This is a common tactic used by criminal organizations that launder money. The transaction data obtained from this platform will be analyzed and charges may follow. The investigation is ongoing. And lastly, it says, appeal to the public. Do you have any information on the illegal activities of individuals or groups of individuals? Contact the RCMP, and they have a phone number that they leave. So while that press release is pretty short, there's actually quite a bit to unpack here. The first thing I at least notice is that they opened this investigation following a tip from Europol. So right off the bat, they are clearly working with other governments in this investigation. And probably they were using some sort of chain analysis and the metadata involved with chain analysis to follow the flows of funds, and they were able to follow the flow of funds to Tradeogre. And with that, they were able to point to, maybe some certain crime that was happening and saying, hey, this person who has, maybe this Bitcoin, they just took it to your exchange. And we need to know who is, we need to know who is behind this transaction. And so the thing with Tradeogre is it is non-KYC. You can use it without, providing any information. You don't have to take the selfie with the license. You don't have to write your name. You don't have to give an address. All you had to do was make an email address and access the website. And so anyways, presumably the Canadian government has contacted Tradeogre in the past and asked them for information. And we can only imagine how often Tradeogre did correspond with them. Probably often if, we take into account all these other coin swap services, they are contacted. And for whatever reason, this time they did not provide enough information, or maybe they stopped providing information. Who knows? But it was enough for the Canadian government to say, screw it, and they just arrested the guy behind it, or people behind it. We don't even know who they arrested, for what it's worth. All we know is that the site was taken down. So yeah, that's the first thing. There was definitely some collaboration going on. Europol, by the way, is the law enforcement agency of the European Union. And the European Union is like 20-something countries in Europe, right? So there's a lot of different, things going on. I'm sure the American feds were also behind this as well, and they were also collaborating. Oftentimes when you see these websites get taken down, you'll see a bunch of, different like emblems of these different agencies, showing off, saying that they seized the site. Unlike with Archetype, they didn't make some anime cutscene. I don't know if you guys remember that. They did take the website down, and if you go to tradeogre.com, you can actually see it. So yeah, I'm on the site right now, and it's in French and in English, but it says this site and its crypto assets have been seized by the RCMP, and it's got their logo here and everything, and it says if you have any information, please contact the Money Laundering Investigation Team in Canada, and it gives a case number. The next thing to point out, though, and this is the most outrageous part about all this, is that they say that they believe the majority of the funds transacted on Tradeogre came from criminal sources, and that the main attraction of this type of platform, which doesn't require users to identify themselves to make an account, is that it hides the source of funds. Now, this is a common tactic used by criminal organizations that launder money. I mean, this is obviously ridiculous. It's people that want privacy. I mean, I know you guys know this, but these KYC exchanges are really dangerous. This is what's like really hilarious about this statement, where when you have these leaks, these these data leaks that happen, or these attacks and hacks that happen, when these exchanges, they lose a lot of data on customers, that benefits criminals, right? Criminals obviously want that data, and then they can target like innocent people. So with a website that doesn't collect that data, it's safer for people to use. I mean, okay, it's not as regulated, so maybe it's more dangerous in that it's a little sketchier, right? You're not insured or anything. But it's safer in that it is, you're not giving away data. The irony behind this is that, the reason you would use a centralized exchange over something like Tradeogre is that you feel like your funds would be safer, right? Right? Your funds would be insured for, to prevent like a rug pull from happening. And yet here, the rug pull was done by the feds. The feds took all the money. What? It's kind of like the whole thing with like Tradeogre. It's a weird thing because like Tradeogre, why would you trust Tradeogre, right? And the thing is, it was a sketchy website. I've used it. I know many other people have used it. We never recommended keeping any funds on Tradeogre, obviously. But the reason Tradeogre was used was literally just because it had been around forever. We weren't really sure why it was still around. It's kind of like, it's just Tradeogre kind of thing. I always assumed that one day they would just shut up, shop and say, okay, guys, we're done. We're retiring. That kind of thing. But they kind of just always were operating. And, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, they could just rug pull one day. They could just close shop. But in this case, they didn't rug pull. The government rug pulled. So, like, this advice of, like, don't keep your funds on an exchange, the exchange could get hacked. The exchange could rug pull your funds. They could take your funds and bet it on other cryptocurrencies and, like, use it, like fractional reserve lending and stuff. We even saw a couple weeks ago with the whole Xano situation that Tradeogre was staking Xano funds. We know that. Which was definitely not supposed to be happening. So they were taking user funds and staking the Xano, if you weren't aware. We know this. So they were doing that. They were sleazy enough to do that. But regardless, that wasn't the actual problem. The actual problem was the government then coming in and just taking all the funds. And, I don't like the government. I don't really trust them. I never would have expected them to do something like this. Like this is bold. This is actually quite bold. They just went in there and they're like, you know what, guys? Actually, these are all criminal funds. We're just going to take all of that. $56 million, the largest in history. It's crazy. But that's literally what they did. And everyone's kind of scratching their heads like, are you serious? Can I get my money back? And I don't know. Are they going to get their money back? We're going to have to wait and see. They're probably going to have to provide KYC. We'll talk about that in a sec. But moving on, the other thing to bring up here is it says at the very last sentence, the transaction data obtained from the platform will be analyzed and charges may follow. The investigation is ongoing. And this is really the thing here. So basically, because everything is seized, all the metadata from Tradeogre is now basically being shared amongst all the different, deep state organizations around the world right now. Because now you have a ton of data from people who are using Tradeogre. And yes, some people were using Tradeogre for totally illegal means. This is true. And what they're going to be doing is they're going to be taking data from centralized exchanges and they're going to be matching it with data from Tradeogre. So if they say, hey, we know that this Bitcoin went into Tradeogre on this time, let's check all the timestamps that we have and how it matches up with all these KYC exchanges. And what they can do is they can actually build transaction graphs. And once they get an account that matches up with the account of a centralized exchange, well, then they dox the person and then they have that information, right? And this is kind of the thing with like CoinSwap services, what governments are actively doing. And we saw this with the incognito market bust. Once they figured out who the person was, they just worked backwards. And so they had the man's KYC exchange. They had all that information. And then what they did is they just worked backwards. So, okay, we know that he received Monero in this account on this day at this exact time. Well, let's look at, a CoinSwap exchange where the funds may have come from. And they just matched up the times. And then they also had seized his Bitcoin wallet. And so by tracing the Bitcoin, they saw the Bitcoin then go into a CoinSwap. And then 20 minutes later, that Monero that they received from that CoinSwap then went into his centralized exchange wallet. And presumably he was using Kraken or Binance. So even though Monero is untraceable, quote unquote, it was actually very easily traceable in that situation because they had a KYC exchange with that information, and then they just used metadata from a CoinSwap site. Now, in this situation, Tradeogre is a little different, right? Because it's not CoinSwap. It's a website you access on the clearnet. And once you access it, you can then, put bids, you can buy cryptocurrency, whatever. So federal investigators, they now have access to all these different accounts and all the different bids that have been made. And, the swaps of cryptocurrency happening. And yeah, obviously that information is extremely useful for them. They can go and tie together transactions now. It's a massive leak of data, actually. And people who have been lazy and unsuspecting, well, maybe they access Tradeogre with, just on the clearnet. Well, now you just doxed your IP. And again, if your IP address was then used on a KYC exchange, well, there's a link. And then they can look at the cryptocurrency that left the KYC exchange. Oh, would you look at that? It also matches this account that we have on Tradeogre. Okay, so we now have a link of cryptocurrency being sent and an IP address. That's a pretty strong connection there. And suddenly that person is doxed. And, maybe that person was lazy with their Monero, and then they sent their Monero directly off of Tradeogre to purchase something. You better believe that this is what they're doing right now. And they have a whole wealth of information going back years. And I have no idea what Tradeogre was holding on their server. I don't even know who got arrested here. we have no idea. It's a very limited information right now. I imagine they have like at least one guy, and they are just, again, they're having him rat out on a bunch of people or something. This is what I imagine is happening, where the reason they haven't released the information is because they're trying to, get more information on other people and stuff. I don't know, maybe they didn't even arrest anybody. Maybe that's still actively ongoing. It's all, the whole thing's very weird with how this has been announced. But nonetheless, they did at least seize the website. And right now they are actively analyzing all the data. The whole thing is outrageous that they think that just because you're using, an exchange like Tradeogre, that automatically means you must be a criminal. But this is the framing that governments are going to be using, and this is the exact same framing that they're going to be using when they eventually start targeting CoinSwap sites. And this is really the main takeaway I want to have with you guys here. The thing with Tradeogre is, it sucks that Tradeogre got shut down. I will talk a little bit about my experience with Tradeogre as well. But the larger picture here, before I get to that, is that Tradeogre is essentially just a non-KYC exchange on the clearnet. And they are now, they effectively have taken down the only exchange that was like a traditional exchange where you're buying cryptocurrency and looking at charts and stuff. So they've already gone after local Monero and peer-to-peer sites. There are still a couple left, to be clear. So they haven't taken out all of these peer-to-peer sites, but many of them have been taken down. They are starting to chip away also at these CoinSwap sites such as Majestic Bank. Again, this is just me assuming. I don't actually know for sure, or maybe not assuming, speculating, I should say. I'm speculating that Majestic Bank was approached a lot and they eventually shut down. There's also that other exchange that shut down earlier this year, EXCH. Remember that? They voluntarily shut down in May, citing the risks of prosecution. So we have that. We have this Tradeogre thing. We have the weird circumstances around Majestic Bank. This is what's slowly happening right now. And a lot of these other sites, they're going to start being targeted as well. It's really only a matter of time. And the reason for that is because these sites allow exchanges of cryptocurrency without identification attached to them. And this is really, really hard for investigators. It really throws a wrench into a lot of things for a couple of reasons. The first is that cryptocurrency, like proving cryptocurrency in a court of law and the flow of transactions, it's really difficult. It's honestly it's a crapshoot is really what it is. It's hard to defend. It's hard to prosecute. Look at the Bitcoin fraud case. You had experts going on the stand saying completely different things about how to trace data. Look at the Tornado Cash, thing that just happened, right? In the Tornado Cash, you had this guy arguing the way that they were tracing funds, which was then torn apart by experts on the internet who were like, this is not how we trace funds, right? In the Bitcoin fraud case, you had experts saying, we're getting completely different numbers than what the prosecution is saying. And so anyways, proving this is really difficult. And what's happening in these courts right now is that you're having these juries like scratching their heads and prosecution saying one thing, defense saying the other thing. And it's kind of a toss up. You don't really know what's happening when you go into it. Federal prosecution, they don't want to deal with that. they want to just get rid of this problem if they can. And that's exactly what they're doing here. So that's the first thing. Like, it's really hard to prove the flow of funds. And also, I've heard from various people, Arctic Mind, for example, who says that just because you view a mixer, Bitcoin mixer, mixing funds, it doesn't automatically prove that you can trace Bitcoin, right? Like, so you've had these Bitcoin mixers be demixed in the past. Does it actually prove that someone was sending Bitcoin? Can you actually trace those funds? It's a lot more complicated than you think, because similarly, IP addresses don't actually prove anything. There's obviously a connection there with someone's IP address to something that happened, but that doesn't really hold up in court as well as you might think. There's doubt that you can put forth, saying that, just because it's the same IP address, someone could have been, in my house, for example, using my internet. But when you have these additional pieces of metadata as well, that's when it gets, more a stronger correlation, right? And anyway, that leads me to my second point here, where for investigators, what they want is ties to KYC as much as possible. That's what they want. They don't want people using anything outside of centralized exchanges, because that's where they are. So when you leave that centralized exchange, it makes their life a lot more difficult, because now they have to deal with other services as well. And some of these services are indeed pretty shady. So going on Tradeogre, well, then they have to, send a subpoena over to them and demand information about certain things. And again, we don't really know how much Tradeogre was dealing with federal investigators, but this does slow them down. So like, if you are actively trying to trace somebody and okay, we know he just sent Bitcoin off of this exchange and he just sent it over to Tradeogre, we need to get that information and follow the flow of the funds. There's a delay, I would imagine, right? If they go to Tradeogre and say, hey, we need this information, how long Tradeogre takes to respond could really affect their investigation. And I imagine this is like actively happening. Of course, it also just makes it a lot muddier too, because it's just another website. It makes, tracing things more difficult. There's more things they have to take into account, etc. And it's, of course, not just Tradeogre. It's all these CoinSwap websites as well. So by going after Tradeogre, it just signals that they are trying to get people away from these alternate websites that, of course, don't have KYC. And that is really the main thing, is that they want KYC on everything. They don't want people using anything unless it has KYC attached to it. That is their end game. Or at least they're going to make it as hard as possible to do anything such as cashing out unless you do have a tie with everything. And eventually we are going to have a situation where the only way you can use cryptocurrency is to have it tied with KYC. That's their dream. Now, the thing is, that is probably not possible. Because think of like gold and silver. Like, you can use gold and silver and like the government can't do anything about it, right? But they can have taxes and they can do things, they can regulate things on top of it. So you can't just go and sell you can't go to a local coin shop and sell $100,000 worth of gold. They would have to take your information down. By law, they have to. Similarly, you can't just show up at a KYC exchange and just dump a bunch of cryptocurrency. They're going to take your information down. However, because cryptocurrency does have this ledger, this public blockchain, well, now they can even go further and they can actually monitor what you're doing. And obviously, this is what the government wants to do. If we have a bunch of people using cryptocurrency, well, we're going to want to make sure we can, watch for the terrorists, right? At least that's what they're saying. They want to watch everybody. And that's what they want to do. And additionally, they don't want people even using cryptocurrency to begin with. They would rather have them buy and hold it like tech stocks. So by making it harder and by, forcing people into these, centralized websites where they're just going to want to like hold their cryptocurrency, or, they'll take their cryptocurrency off into a doxed wallet. By doing that, they at least have a handle on things. And that's their goal. And it's not just with KYC exchanges. They want KYC wallets as well. So your wallets will be, essentially approved and licensed. That is their goal. And Tradeogre is the next step in this process. So this is from the Rage. Again, Canada seizes $56 million in customer funds without charges. So it says, this week, we've reported that the cryptocurrency exchange Tradeogre has been taken offline and that its funds have been drained for millions of dollars. Accompanying the draining of the funds was an op return message, as well as an Ethereum IDM message claiming that the funds were now in custody of the Canadian police. Yesterday, Canadian authorities confirmed that the exchange has been seized in a press release, and total of funds now in possession of Canadian authorities amount to over $56 million, but the funds seized appear to belong to Tradeogre customers, and no charges have been filed. Police is now considering whether to forfeit the seized assets as property of the state, the Globe and Mail reports. According to Sergeant Matthew Lagarde, the Canadian police believe Tradeogre was run by a man in the United States who recently passed away. So that's actually news to me. They believe that it was just by one person in the United States, which is interesting. Recently passed away. You can put your tinfoil hat on there, and they think it's only one man. We don't know who that is, though. Right. Moving on. Tradeogre was a custodial no KYC exchange, particularly popular among Monero users, where users could sign up with no more than an email address. A file on Tradeogre was first opened by Canadian authorities in June 2024 following a tip from Interpol. The investigation found that the platform contravened Canadian laws and regulations. Okay, we read that. Then it goes on to say, however, the funds seized by Canadian law enforcement appear to belong to Tradeogre customers and not to operators of the Tradeogre website. The investigation is ongoing. The Canadian police says, adding that the transaction data obtained from the platform will be analyzed, right? And suggesting that no charges have been filed so far, neither against Tradeogre customers nor its operators. The existence of credible evidence against any wrongdoing of Tradeogre customers is not apparent from the authorities' statement. And the article then wraps up by saying, the Canadian police hereby effectively reverses the burden of proof. To get their money back, Tradeogre customers will likely have to prove to authorities that their money did not stem from illegal activities, instead of authorities proving that it did. A process that is not just immensely costly and lengthy, but arguably undemocratic. The Tradeogre seizure marks the first time that a cryptocurrency exchange platform has been dismantled by Canadian law enforcement. It is unclear whether the exchange was located in Canada. So that leads me to one of the major issues here, probably the biggest issue. So obviously the Canadian government, now they have all these funds. Well, what's going to happen now? And the issue here is that for the people who want to get their funds back, they're probably going to have to provide not only KYC information, but a breakdown of what they were using their money for. And that's crazy. But I don't see any other outcome from this. And I mean, just imagine, like, here they are, they're trying to build their cases, right? They have all this metadata. And this is just another step for them. Okay, now we're going to confirm this metadata that we have, the ties that we have. And we're going to make people tell us their name. We're going to make them take a selfie with their ID. We're going to make them do all this different stuff. And they're just going to build their case more and more and more against probably targeted people like vendors, for example. So for example, people who've been selling drugs on the darknet. They maybe have some leads. They maybe think that, okay, we know this person was using Tradeogre. They have all these transactions going to Tradeogre. We just need more information here, or we need more confirmation that it's related to help build our case, etc. And what's interesting here is, they believe that it's run by an American, but for whatever reason, the Canadian authorities were the ones to seize the server. So there's definitely some information we're not being told here. And of course, this new information that it was just by a man living in the United States who passed away. So I'm not really sure what that entails. But what we do know is that they have the funds and they're not giving it away unless it can be proven that, well, this didn't originate from an illegal transaction, which is kind of why the Rage kind of sarcastically says that this effectively reverses the burden of proof, right? Prove that it wasn't used for illegal means. Like that's ridiculous, right? How can you do that? It's really just an excuse for them to collect more information and advance these cases that are currently being investigated. So yeah, this is a crazy story, and it sucks too. My experience with Tradeogre, and I'll talk real quick, is I always liked it. I always supported it. Tradeogre to me was kind of this goofy website that for whatever reason just still was around. We kind of just took it for granted a little bit. It's got this like black metal logo with the right, you know what I mean? The Tradeogre black metal font. I don't know why they chose that. And its Twitter profile picture is like some Dungeons and Dragons, fan art or something. Maybe it's from World of Warcraft or something. They got this, ogre. I always thought that was kind of funny. One time I used Tradeogre. I forgot what happened, but basically I did have an issue, and I went to go contact their customer service and found out that the recommended way of doing it was to DM them on Twitter, which is what I did, and they were responsive. So that was nice. But yeah, it was always kind of this weird website where somehow it was still kicking. Somehow it was still around. And I was under the impression that, okay, with, sites like KuCoin, that was another non-KYC exchange. But for KuCoin, I believe they got rid of their non-KYC, right? They now, it's KYC only. But they were approached and they changed course. With Tradeogre, it kind of just seems like they were always steadfast in being non-KYC, right? And unfortunately, over time, it has come back and it has gone to them. And we don't know who actually was behind it. We don't know a lot of the details here. But we do know that this is the next step that is being taken against non-KYC methods of getting cryptocurrency or swapping cryptocurrency or even just using cryptocurrency. And this is a huge story. So that is the end of that. Definitely a crazy thing to read, and especially too that it was Canada. That was bizarre. I didn't even realize that Mounties had computers. Was I the only one? I kept thinking of like these guys like sitting on their horses with like laptops on their horses. I didn't realize that the Mounties also had like a tech unit. That was news to me as well. But yeah, it was surprising that Canada was the ones who eventually shut it down. Probably the first time they've ever actually shut down a website like this, right? So anyways, RIP Tradeogre. Thank you for your service. All right, so before we get to the rest of the news, I wanted to have a little ad break where I'm going to talk about my merch. All right, so I wanted to advertise my merch for you guys. I got 2 t-shirts, and I thought what better way to do that would be to ask my pal Robot to write something special for me, for you guys to help promote it. All right, so last night I texted him, and he did receive it, and apparently he's got something really special for you guys. All right, Robot, take it away.
Beboop, are you looking for a crowdsourced website which helps you to catalog your household appliances and the location for the household appliances, which would allow me to know exactly what household appliances you have and where those household appliances are located? Well, look no further. You can go to antimoonboy.com/robotmap to participate today. Beboop.
What? No. I texted you asking to promote my t-shirts on antimoonboy.com/merch, not to promote your website. That is clearly some sort of parody of the Charlie Kirk doxing site.
Beep-boop. By giving me your location, I can show up unexpectedly to your house and see your household items such as toasters, coffee makers, and vacuum cleaners. Beep-boop.
Aren't you dating my vacuum cleaner? What happened with that?
Beep-boop. Please sign up for Robotmap today and let me know what appliances you have so I can steal them. I mean, meet them. Thank you. Beep-boop.
Yeah, okay. The other thing, though, you can do is you can go to antimoonboy.com/merch. I got 2 t-shirts there, $30 each plus shipping and handling. They're really nice quality. You know, in actual fact, on XMR Bazaar, I have like 11 or 12 reviews. They're all 5 stars. Everyone likes them. These shirts are great quality. And yeah, this is a really great way to donate to the show and also get something back. So I'd really appreciate that. So you can go to antimoonboy.com/merch and you can buy some t-shirts today. All right, to wrap up the show, we got 2 stories here, both from VX Underground on Twitter. The first one regarding some drama with Tor. This story was all over Twitter this week. So basically, there's a guy by the name of Conrad Rockenhouse. He's a Tor operator based out of Michigan. He was arrested in 2020 after refusing to cooperate with the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation. He is a disabled United States veteran, and he ran the fastest Tor node in the United States. There's different types of Tor nodes, by the way. He ran an exit relay, which is the most useful in investigations, kind of to quickly summarize the exit nodes, because if you allow government officials to have access to it, that is the most crucial node to have to decrypt traffic. Anyways, they requested access to his exit node, and he denied the request. And later on, his home was raided, and he was charged with violating the CFAA, which is the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. And it was alleged that this was because he was because of some sort of disagreement with a prior employer, and the feds had used this to arrest him, essentially, is what the story, how it was told. And it says here, interestingly, to help resolve the matter, law enforcement requested he decrypt his Tor exit node to prove his innocence. After he refused, he was held in a pretrial detention cell for over 3 years. He was denied bail after law enforcement stated that Mr. Rockenhouse used Linux to access the dark web and was not complying and not allowing them to access his Tor exit node. But after his wife filed an official complaint and Mr. Rockenhouse was miraculously released, he was raided by the United States Marshal Fugitive Task Force 2 times. They took him out of his home, threw him to the ground, beat him, smashed his windows, and threatened to murder his animals. So this is how the story was presented to us initially. But it turns out this is a biased account. Now, I'm not defending the feds here. They're pieces of garbage, right? But also this guy who's running these Tor nodes, he's also not really a good guy here. So this is a situation where both sides aren't great. Turns out that the reason he had this employer mad at him was because he was fired, and then he still had access to the VPN for that employer, and he just crashed the servers of that employer. And then so later on, the employer rehired him to help fix this issue because they didn't realize it was actually him. And then they found out later that he did cause the issue, and then they fired him a second time. So, furthermore, there's some other stuff as well. He probably was actually doing shady things to access Tor, and so I don't think that's necessarily bad, but also he was doing things that were pretty shady as well. The feds are overstepping their boundaries, but also this guy was kind of playing with fire, it sounds like. So I would recommend, if you want to do a deep dive on this, Mental Outlaw already did, so check out Mental Outlaw's summary of this. It's like 15 minutes. He does a really good job of touching on a lot of the things that kind of go against this, how the story was initially kind of put forward. And yeah, I would check that out if I were you, if you're interested at least. But yeah, I mean, it seems like this story, the way it was presented initially, was that, you know, this guy was just completely innocent, but it doesn't really seem to be the case. Anyways, so yeah, that is that story. And then lastly, one last thing I want to talk about, Scattered Spider. This was a ransomware group. They were arrested. And this is from the Department of Justice. United Kingdom national charged in connections with multiple cyber attacks, including on critical infrastructure. A complaint filed in District of New Jersey was unsealed today, charging Thala Jubair, a United Kingdom national, with conspiracies to commit computer fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering in relation to at least 120 computer network intrusions and extortion involving 47 U.S. entities. The complaint alleges victims paid at least $115 million in ransom payments. So yeah, this guy's fucked. He's facing a lot of time. Yeah, he's totally fucked. Here's what's interesting about this, though. So, VX Underground, again, I'm citing him. I guess he must have did a Freedom of Information Act, because he actually has the complaint that was filed. And this is taken from the complaint. It says, quote, blockchain analysis and other investigation revealed that cryptocurrency contained in a wallet discovered on server 1 was used to purchase 2 gift cards, one in or around November 2022 and one in or around January 2023. Law enforcement provided information associated with those cards to a food delivery company. In response, the food delivery company provided information for one account, which was used to order items that were delivered to Jubair's apartment complex. Delivery for that account was delivered to Jubair's apartment complex as late as on or about May 13, 2024. Cryptocurrency contained in a wallet on server 1 was used to purchase 5 gift cards on or about April 16, 2023. Law enforcement provided information associated with those cards to a gaming company. In response, the gaming company provided information for 2 accounts demonstrating that A, one gaming account 1, was funded in part through 5 gift cards on or about April 16, 2023, and B, gaming account 1 was accessed by the same electronic device that accessed a second gaming account, which is gaming account 2, and C, as set forth above, gaming account 2 was accessed using an account that was registered to Jubair at his residence in his name. So anyways, yeah, this is pretty straightforward blockchain analysis, right? They had a server, they had the Bitcoin associated with that server, they followed the Bitcoin. Oh, it went to this coin card website. Could have been coin cards, right? Or it could have been another website where you could buy gift cards with cryptocurrency. They followed the funds and they figured out what he was doing. So they probably did send a subpoena to coin cards or site like that, got all the information. And because he was using Bitcoin, it was a very straightforward process. They used all the metadata and yeah, they were able to follow everything. So what does this tell us? Well, it tells us exactly, what we've been talking about, right? Metadata used from websites will be used against you. And in this case, he purchased a Uber Eats, delivery, that goes right to his house. So they have his address already connected to his name. They have the Bitcoin, the exact amount of Bitcoin being sent. Everything all matches, right? And with that, law enforcement can just build a case against you. And in this case, this guy who got $36 million worth of cryptocurrency, that $36 million in this account, right? He then sent Bitcoin from that account. And obviously that Bitcoin is flagged and they just followed it. And by following it, they were able to dox him essentially. So yeah, these criminals who are super geniuses, they don't even understand how cryptocurrency works, evidently. Anyways, guys, that's the show. Thank you so much for listening. AntiMoonboy.com. See you guys next week.